So today, first of all, hi, this is Quasi Otter, of course, and today I'm talking about a topic I talked about in my art appreciation class. We had a lecture on basically what do you want to get out of art, and I'll be speaking about that throughout this little playthrough. Um, but before I go into that, Um, I, j- I think I'm just gonna start playing through one of the maps. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure how I came across this. I think maybe someone from the Quake Discord pointed it out. But this is by Sean Campbell, um, Shrimp Scampy on Twitter. Um, I don't speak Latin, so primum non sere, something like that. I don't know. Of course, I became interested in this because non-combat Quake map, and it's really bizarre looking. Um, and just these screenshots alone definitely sold me. Okay. And then also released, he also released this map, which I'll be playing as well and talk about. And yeah, here's my comment. All right, so I'm going to. Okay, so it means first do no harm. Oh, I guess that provides some context to that. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so I'm gonna look at the README real quick. So this is a copper mod. Um, I I assume that most people here know about Quake, but copper is basically a hmm. What's the words used to describe it? Not trying to change Quake gameplay, but sort of something life of I don't know. I forgot the term. Um, but it just does little tweaks. Okay, and it provides some extra developer tools. Okay, so um, Primum.bsp was made over a weekish during the COVID-19 pandemic. This was therapy via geometry. Just making something that looks like a metal album cover and a math textbook had a baby while screaming internally about American healthcare, the lack thereof. Which I can attest to is a thing. I do live in America, unfortunately, because of the healthcare issues I've dealt with. Some of it, it's absurd. Um, but I'm in a better position than most because I don't make that much money, enough to live on. But you, let me put it in perspective. In order to get free healthcare here in Oregon, you have to make more than four or make less than 1436 USD a month, and I make less than that. So, um, what I'm searching for in terms of work is less than that, which is kind of sad. So, yeah, kind of envious of other countries. But anyways, um, to continue, Zigseer.bsp was made in 2017 and never released, so I figured I'd throw it in here as a bonus. There's no combat in either of these maps, just wander through and take in the sights and enjoy. So that's definitely speaking to me, and I absolutely love that. Because if you know any of my maps, or you've been on Discord for any time, in the Quake mapping channel, I only make pacifist maps, which is very difficult. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. Okay. Let me turn off or lower the volume. And turn off. Okay. So um, straight away, we have this really striking composition. But before we even get to that, look at the HUD at the bottom. So we have 6 armor, 6 health, and 6 shotgun shells. Um, I think that's a pretty cool way to even start with like your starting stats are really interesting. Obviously, a nod to 666, the number of the beast, blah blah blah. Okay. Um, but yeah, right away we have this visual where it's only black, white, and red, and they're all flat colors. There's fog that gives a sense of atmospheric perspective, but all of the textures are just flat colors, which is very unusual for Quake. Okay, so yeah, and then we have this. So it's black, white, and red. Those are so this is a monochromatic color scheme. If it was just black and white, it would be achromatic colors. Achromaticism meaning a lack of hues, HUE. Okay, but since we have red, it's monochromatic. All right, and so we have this pentagram on top. Um, speak of the devil and stuff. Um, in the front of us is this syringe with a cross on it, and the syringe is constantly lowering and high and increasing its volume of the quote unquote liquid, um, which is very strange. I feel it's pretty metaphoric, um, but I'm not good at metaphors. Okay, and then we have these platforms with these guns. The gun, as we can see, the first two guns that are closest to us, the guns are layered right on top of each other, or maybe they're not, but it appears like that. So let's collect them. Okay, so it was just perspective. So when we collect this, it says gun, and then we get another gun, and then gun, 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 and then we have gun. It's spelled out in the shape of the word gun. And yet you have, besides the axe, you have 6 ammo for everything else. Okay, so this in itself is a really interesting structure. I mean, look at, I can't, unfortunately, I can't use the pointer, but look at the structure of how the text is built. So if you're familiar with concrete poetry, it's words and letters put into the shape of an image. Okay, so here to me it looks like a with a gun on the top line, and then the more guns. It's like has a triangular shape to it, triangular base. Um, Kind of looks like a tall building, like a pagoda or something. Um, I'm not sure if there is supposed to be intentional concrete poetry with this, but it's interesting to think about, especially with the last line with the G making up the G, the U making up the U, and making up the N. Like gun, like what does that mean? Um, it's not taking for granted the fact that Quake is about guns, a lot of guns, right? Um, and then we have this field of crucifixes down here. Of course, crucifix is something we, as a human race, raised in a society, um, we equate to Jesus on the cross, Christianity, um, and religion. But when it comes to Quake, we usually, I don't know if it appears so much in Quake, but um, in does it appear in Doom upside down crosses? I'm not sure, but an inverted crucifix is generally considered satanic or evil. Okay, so let's go here, and then we have this room of 3 crosses. Okay, oh, I'm forgetting my. Um, There's an inverted cross in E2M1 in Doom. Awesome, thanks. Um, so now we have three crosses. What this reminds me of, I was raised as a Catholic. I've long since canceled my subscription. But there's the Stations of the Cross where Jesus is hung up or crucified on a hill. I can't remember the name of the hill. Um, I don't know, but there's three people who were crucified, and Jesus was in the middle on the tallest one, and so that's what this reminds me of. Um, then we have this beautiful aperture opening. Aperture meaning like basically how the like in the James Bond intros, how things open up in a circular um, pattern, I guess, outside. So yeah, that's really nice opening, and then we have this weird abstract hallway, right? Um, so we're in this dark area, and these squares spiral and focus onto this inverted cross. Okay, and so because the inverted cross is in a brighter area, that's where our eyes are being led to. Um, so let's get satanic, shall we? Okay. And then we have this triple inverted cross here, um, which I think is a pretty interesting way to frame this because we start off only seeing this, and then it turns into the triple inverted cross. Okay, mirroring what we just saw in the room before. And when we look back, we can only see this regular crucifix. Tin Cup, hell yeah! What has God done for us lately? No comment there. Yeah, I cannot speak of. I mean, depends what God. If you believe in God or gods, yeah, I don't know. I'm agnostic, so I don't have any stake in any of it. But what an interesting brush. I'm not sure how this was made. Sean Campbell did say that there was no shaders, which I mean I believe, but also wow. I'm not totally sure exactly like how shaders work, but I usually know a shader when I see one, and apparently this isn't one. So we'll see. Yeah, Tin Kelp. Yeah, for sure the regular crosses are in the dark and the inverted crosses are in the light. So yeah, I guess inverted crosses are good. So we'll go into this portal. All right. Um, and so that we come into this room with a floor where we can't pass through, and these triangles. Um, the other maps like has this as well, so I'm just gonna skip this room. Um, all right, and then we end up here. So when we move around and get our perspective, we see this giant coffin upside down with the upside down crucifix, and it's floating and bobbing. Um, so death, and then we look up. Well, look at that mysterious object later. So we move across here because if we just go down, we'll just teleport, which I've done plenty of times unintentionally. Okay. And so I move around here, and then here's this platform. Okay. So this brings up another floor. So we can see there's a couple more floors. Oops. Okay. Yeah, and so we're in an area that we're on a pyramid that's black and white with touches of red. Some more monochromaticism. So we get closer to this object, and obviously it's a skull. Surprise. Um, but it's not a great look from down below. Looks much better when you're at more eye level with it. So here you're forced to travel along the perimeter of the pyramid. Okay. So we get to the top, and then this is the skull. Again, it's hard to believe it's not done with shaders. I have zero understanding of how this would happen. Also, I'm a baby at making Quake. I've only done 5 or 6 maps so far. I'm doing my 7th. And yeah, it's kind of cool, right? Because it's like has this thick cell shaded outline. Cells referring to the outline, which I believe has roots in animation. I believe that's what's referencing the cells of an animation, which is a page. Um, a wireframe. Look at the skulls. Um, okay, so oops, let me do bind P, no clip. Oh yeah, so it is pretty complex. Um, interesting. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure how the black outline works. That's really fascinating. I'm guessing the author definitely. I'm guessing the author did some shading, or some scripting in Quake C, because that's really impressive. It exists here, but when we move over, this black disappears. Yeah, I don't understand this at all. Um, Probably some sort of like invisibility or visibility culling or something like that. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, but it's a really technically impressive skull. But also like it's kind of goofy in a sense because it's so simplified and cartoonish. And that's making something more iconic than realistic. So this is more of a symbol or representation of death, basically. If it was like a very realistic looking skull, then we would perceive it differently. But now it's entering the realm of the symbolic. Um, if you're interested in sort of learning about the symbolic and representation stuff, there's this book called Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud that goes pretty deep into that. Um, and I'll link. I recommend purchasing the book to support Scott McCloud, even though he's probably filthy rich from that already. But he is a good egg, and I'd recommend buying the book. But I'll link to a PDF online about it. Okay. And so we also have these crosses on a diagonal. So um, when we have diagonal lines, essentially that means it's in between the stability of horizontality, um, and it's in between that and verticality, which means like height, standing up, impressiveness, etc. And so when we have something diagonally, that's a more unstable way of things to be, because it's neither horizontal nor vertical. So it, it usually implies instability or falling down because it's usually in an in between state. Of course, that's if you think in terms of binaries, which I don't like. But so this is a really interesting take. Like, what does this mean? The cross is diagonal. Mean the cross is falling down, possibly. Um, the fall of religion. I don't know. It's a very abstract map, so I think it's a lot better to sort of to just interpret it by yourself. Okay. Um, and then we're under this very large I don't do architecture, unfortunately, so I don't know what this would be called. Like, not an awning, not a pergola. I'm not sure. Um, and then we have this thoughts and prayers. So thoughts and prayers, right? That's a common thing for religious people to say. That's kind of a cop out instead of actually providing help. Religious people will say thoughts and prayers, which is essentially a cop out gesture to indicate, oh, we're thinking of you, but that doesn't really do anything. That's not to denounce the power of prayer. Um, Again, I'm agnostic, so I don't believe or disbelieve any religion necessarily. My opinion is just to stay out of it completely. I don't have the answers, and I don't know, and I don't think I'll ever know. Um, the thing with prayers, I do have to say, is I tend to not really believe in prayer, because it's kind of a it's a strange power dynamic to have with your god or religion, right? Um, but at the same time, the power of prayer can be like helpful for people. It brings peace to, like, if you're praying for yourself, um, there's really no harm in that if you're not praying for the other's downfall. So I would say like prayers aren't completely useless. Like, I think they definitely they can, depending on how they're said and stuff, they can have a psychological impact that is positive, but could also be used negatively to manipulate people. And um, as Tin Cup says, the religious version of making a donation in your name to the human fund. So again, thoughts and prayers, like that specific phrase, um, is a meaningless gesture, essentially. Especially in the context of Quake and the upside down crosses. This is obviously having to do with questioning religion or just denouncing it, uh, somewhere along those lines. And again, the term thoughts and prayers is just BS, essentially. Um, yeah, so let's move on. Okay, and then we come up to here. So now we're on an altar of inverted crosses, and here's the exit. But of course, we want to look around before. So we look up and we see a cube. It's like, okay, so. And then we move around and it transforms like this. And what? And so then we come over here and it's back to normal. Um, yeah, so this is a really weird way of playing with perspective. This really freaked me out at first because I thought I was like not seeing things right. Because I was, the first time I played this, I was very sleepy, and I did it right before I go to bed, or I did it right before I went to bed, and so I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I understand it now, um, but yeah, it deals with perspective. I don't think it would work if you use like an FOV of 30. Um, Actually, no, that makes it work better. I need to go the opposite direction. Actually, yeah, it does. It does work. You have to be more specific with your angle, but let's go back to. Oh no, let's do 170. So yeah, that's doesn't work as well, but it still works like that. You have to be in a very specific spot. Let's go back to 90. All right. So yeah, what an interesting map. Really beautiful use of textures, lines, color, shapes, fog. It's just a really bizarre map. Uh, One that's steeped in metaphor. I don't. The README doesn't say anything specifically about what everything means. And also, I don't want to know what everything means because I love not knowing. And I think that's really important in abstract pieces like this. Okay, so yeah, here's the cube. Here's what it looks like. But yeah, this map totally blew me away. And then that happens. So yeah, what does that mean, right? Like we exit, but we get killed at the end, right? Are we being sacrificed to Satan, to this scold god? Are we just dead? Have we left the realm of Christianity? Um, yeah, I don't know. It's something to contemplate. Okay, so there's that map, and I'll play. It's just easier to do this than change the map. Okay, and then here's the other map that Sean Campbell did, lower gravity. So, yeah, the lower gravity map that Tin Coat mentioned, secret level in Quake with the crucifix. Yeah, that's called Ziggurat Vertigo, and this is kind of a, at least I think, a nod to that because you have lower gravity and ziggurats are pyramid shapes essentially. So, um, yeah, that's what this is. So I actually wrote down on an index card, um, or on a post-it note, what these are called. So these are called Sierpinski triangles. Sierpinski triangle, and what that means is a triangle that's recursively bigger and smaller. Because this is Quake, albeit Copper Quake, which is a mod, there's it's not infinite. It's limited in how much, but as you can see, it's pretty wild. Um, there's a lot of boxes here that make triangles. I'm guessing they're boxes just for the sake of being able to traverse the space instead of just like falling off everything. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of boxes here. Um, however, I don't think it was technically too much work to do this because you could copy and paste and scale. Um, so like what I mean by a lot of work or a lot of hard work is like the Sean Campbell probably didn't have to place everything like manually. Getting things to scale, lining things up, that was probably where there's a lot of work being done. Okay. Um, and so, yeah, I'm just going to climb to the top and then walk around and talk a little bit about abstraction. So, yeah, I'm climbing slowly. Um, this is not a speedrun level, obviously. So, as you can see at the bottom, there's no kills or no secrets to be had. So, this is just something more to explore. Um, so, I'm just going to get to the top. And I think all the cubes are white, but with just blue lighting. I'm not sure though. But yeah, thank you for playing when you get to the top. And so we'll jump off. And this is our view. And what a gorgeous view. Okay. So yeah, so this is a recursive map or recursive triangles. We have this, I mean, you could just say like, oh, it's a lot of triforces in one, right? That's an easy way to put it. Um, but yeah, this is a quote unquote pointless map because there's no exit, there's no kills. It's just more of like an experimental art piece, right? And so we can like walk around and play around and look how gorgeous these shadows are and the bounce light and stuff like that. Lighting's super beautiful, extremely well done. Um, So yeah, abstraction. So as far as abstraction is concerned, it's something. I mean, it's pretty much mostly boomers who say this, but abstract art kind of makes people infuriated because it's quote unquote pointless. It's easy to make. There's no skill involved. There's all sorts of arguments with assumptions about why abstract art sucks. I assume anyone who watches this likes abstract art. Um, I don't think there's any boomers in the Quake community. Um, well, well, maybe dump truck, right? Teasing. And I don't know how old dump truck is. Well, call him a millennial. No, no, no. Not millennial. Gen Xer. I have no idea. So, um, yeah. So abstraction is interesting because it's something that's not universally loved. Um, so a so when people talk about abstraction, it's mostly in terms of painting, um, because that's basically the most how would you say it? The most prestigious kind of art there is. Um, from my perspective, as an art instructor and someone who has a graduate degree in art, that's from what I've observed. And art that was abstract was considered outrageous because, again, people thought it took no time or skill, um, or any of that, um, which is not true whatsoever. Sometimes it is true, because your kid can make abstract stuff and people can make paintings in like 3 minutes. So, yeah, that can be a valid viewpoint, but that's a blanket statement, which is extremely unhelpful. Um, so, one of the reasons why abstract painting came into being is because photography was invented in um, the late or mid 1800s, and then eventually some artists realized, well, if photography can represent the real world, we don't have to do that in painting anymore. We can make whatever we want, and thus began this modernist movement where it was about um, the materials being important in themselves. Like you could have paintings that are just paintings; they don't have to represent the real world. So it's so these paintings became self-referential. Like, here's a painting using paint, and there's no illusion of depth. Like, there's no pretending that the world is representing here. It's just colors. It's just strokes and stuff like that. Okay, and again, people who don't like abstraction or think it's lazy usually value uh, like classical, masterful ideas of what art should be. Okay, unfortunately, they mistake what they value for what art should be and what's good art, which is kind of awful because, of course, art is subjective, um, and to say something's invalid is just kind of narcissistic. You're prioritizing your views and not listening to other people. Um, so abstraction's kind of polarizing, even though it's been around for like in painting 100 years. And as far as in general, since the beginning, like there's a lot of cave paintings from. This is why I'm not an art historian, from a long time ago, hundreds and hundreds of years. Um, I don't, and probably BC. I don't know if it's probably BC. I'm really bad at this. Um, like patterns are abstract art, right? And we wear patterns on our shirt, um, but when it comes to like declaring something as art, capital ART, people become really I was gonna say a bad word, um, hurt about it. So yeah, like some people don't value abstraction again because they feel that skill as should be tied to rendering things realistically as they appear in real life, and anything but that isn't as skillful. Of course, some people do think that abstraction, an abstraction of real life is fine. And what I mean by that is, so I need to talk in more art school terms, I guess. So when something is non-representational, that means completely abstract, no references to the outside world. Um, but a more technical term for, and that's a technical term for no references to the outside world. But if you have something that's abstracted, that means you can take a painting of a cow and instead of basically like what Picasso's known for of having like these weird wacky faces, that's an abstraction of real life, right? Because they're simplified. They're not the colors that they're supposed to be if you're a healthy person. Um, and mm, and so that's an abstraction of real life. But if you want to zoom out even further, any sort of painting, any sort of sculpture, that's rendered one like as realistically as you can get, even a photograph, those are still abstractions because of the fact that, again, let's go back to the example of a cow. If we have a photograph of a cow, it's still just a photograph. The actual cow you took a picture of is not on slash in the photograph. So we're representing the idea of a cow, and when we create artwork, um, the most famous example is Rene Magritte, with the this is not a pipe painting. Ceci n'est pas un pipe. It's called, I don't know the French title, but it's basically called The Treachery of Images. So again, things that are on the a painting are not real. They're abstractions, but it's closer to reality than a non-representational painting, right? So, so yeah, abstraction's a really interesting thing. So when we come into Quake, we see this map. Like this is just a bunch of cubes, which is basic building block of 3D um, model makers, map makers, etc. Um, and it's just repeated into these shapes that have no like apparent meaning. And maybe it's just an experiment just to see like cool shapes and what kind of shadows you can do with different lighting and stuff. Um, so there might be no point to this, and that's fine. Again, art is something that is extremely subjective, and that means what you can like what your view is valid. I will say that if you have um, a bigoted, hateful view of art, then I would say it's not valid anymore. Um, Technically, yeah, sure, it's valid, but I've learned that it's important to have no tolerance of those views, because being polite in the face of the alt right, for example, isn't actually going to get much done. You have to have some sort of what I was listening to a podcast yesterday, perceived violence, or not perceived violence, potential violence. I forgot the word, but it was on this podcast called Bearded Fruit, which my friends Cody and Neil Daigle Orions run, and they talked about how you just have to, like, for example, um, you'll you'll have this person who's in a prestigious position or whatever, and they're getting support and money, and by a lot of fans, and there's like alt right people who are like sort of supporting this person, um, and like either by I forgot the term, the perceived or potential violence or whatever, like that would include like spitting out facts, like demonetizing that person and stuff like that. You can't just like always be polite, and because that's not a tactic that works against the alt right. There's this. I haven't seen any of it yet, unfortunately, because I don't want to feel negative and bummed out. But I think it's called the alt right playbook on YouTube, which is the way some alt right people use rhetoric to talk about arguments. Anyways, I'm getting way off the point, but those are still salient points. Um, Essentially, like a lot of views are valid. However, what I really dislike is when people have these stubborn views and they're not willing to be open to other perspectives. So I in my slideshow yesterday. Oh yeah, I'm gonna link my slideshow um, through my other um, Twitch account. So there's links to these slideshows or to these videos. One by Andy Rooney, one by Morley Safer, both of 60 Minutes, I believe. And it's just basically like, okay, boomer, because they talk crap about modern art. First of all, modern art is they're talking about contemporary art, so it's like they don't know well enough. They haven't done enough research to say like what they're talking about. Um, Honestly, like I don't care if people call contemporary art modern art. So contemporary art is from basically the 1950s until now. It you also can just mean like whatever era we're currently in, and modern art is usually um, 1850s to 1950s or somewhere around that time. So those are technically the definitions. But the fact that these two white men were on 60 Minutes talking to like a huge public audience and didn't do their research is kind of awful. Actually, it's very awful. All the comments in those videos, most of them like just agree like, yeah, modern art is crap, but the downside of this is they're picking out the most extreme examples of like weird conceptual art, um, and not thinking about like like middle of the road art. No, I don't mean like middle of the road as an average, but stuff that's like not necessarily controversial. There's a lot of contemporary art. I am guaranteed those um, straight white boomers would have loved. They're dead now. Um, but just to put a blanket statement onto abstract art is kind of awful, especially since they have like a gigantic audience for that. Um, and they didn't really try to understand. Um, so Morley Safer did ask questions of a couple of the artists, but then his voiceover said like, "This is academic speak. I don't know what they're talking about," which is fair. That like the artists were talking in this like BS academic language, but at the same time, like he just dismissed instead of trying to understand. Like, can you speak of this in normal terms? So he set up what's essentially a straw man argument, which means making the other side seem weak so they're easy to uh, disprove or make look stupid. Thanks for the link, Tin Kelp. Um, so yeah, those were pretty awful segments, and I think that's the biggest fault with people who just dismiss things. They're not open to different possibilities. Okay. So I'm going to play a map that actually I should go to it. It's called Anoxia. If you're watching this and you know what this is, I bet you're rolling your eyes right now. So we'll go to Anoxia. Okay, so this was made in 1996. Oh, it's actually 1.6. Probably because of one of my ratings. I think I rated it higher. Oh, maybe I didn't. But a lot of these, uh, yeah. So just read these reviews. When my wife asked how bad map could possibly get, I showed her this. Um, my girlfriend and I. All right, but come on, this is terrible by any measurement. We've all heard of misaligned textures, blah blah blah. This is the two of the worst, most poorly constructed rooms I've ever seen in Quake. Um, there's all sorts of um, things about this. And here comes this wonderful comment. This is pure unadulterated masterpiece of map design. Why can't you fools recognize art when you see it? Frickin' SJWs. I don't. I mean, that's just absurd. So that's essentially aligning politics with art. Um, it makes no sense to me, this argument. Um, so number one, anytime someone uses SJWs in a serious sense, their opinions to be ignored. Um, but this is definitely someone who's not just conservative politically, but their views of what Quake maps should be, right? Because they're obviously lampooning the fact that art is subjective; it could be anything. Um, I would say to that, as far as like art can be subjective, I can poop on the canvas and call art. Um, sure, I do agree, but at the same time, if it's not made in good faith, then that's just stupid. Um, if you're trolling with art like that, um, you're just not actually trying to have an earnest conversation. You're just making a statement that's just trying to be offensive. Um, so there's this artwork called Artist Shit by Piero Manzoni, 1961. I definitely butchered his name. Um, so this is supposedly um, his poop in here, um, and it's a very famous conceptual piece. Of course, this is something that people say, "Oh, come on! Now this is like literal shit, right?" Um, but like what does that say? Um, I don't. I'm not super familiar with all his work. I know they're kind of like they can be pretty silly. Um, and I think part of it, in my opinion, is like just sort of turning anything like I don't know. I think it is making fun of artists, but just the art world in general, and also just kind of pushing limits. And I do feel it was kind of yeah. I think it's more symbolic and made in good faith. I feel like he wasn't just trolling, um, but also just making like a statement of some sort. I don't know. So I also think it might be like something to talk about, um, like collectors, like valuing collectors. So also in my slideshow, I also talk about, or um, I linked to this video of that famous duct tape banana that costs $150,000. That gives really good insight into like what the banana is, like how it's working, and it's a really really good video. This channel, the art assignment, is probably the best art channel there is because the host is very open minded and to things. So yeah. So again, Anoxia is hated so much, um, very 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 much. How did it come to earn the classic tag? So it's old, and so people just hate it. So One of the things is there's no exit, so we'll go to the README, which I don't think anyone actually went to. Um, so yeah, single player, yes, that's questionable, but yes, only to four for deathmatch. I kind of feel it's more made for deathmatch. It was made in these really old editors, so maybe that explains how quote unquote bad it is. Um, yeah, this person like couldn't get everything right. They're having technical issues. Maybe it was their first map. Who knows? Um, author's notes. If you have any questions, here's the email. This is my first time, so be gentle. Time for a bender. I did try to get a hold um, of Paul Cook, but unfortunately I couldn't. And I tried doing a Google search, but um, no success there. So let's give it a try. So I don't know if any of my students are watching right now, either live or recording, but um, if you are this, I will be using guns. Yeah, Noxia. And there will be zombie dogs that I will be killing. FYI, they're zombie dogs. So they're not real dogs. Don't worry, but they do yelp like real dogs, and it's kind of sad. So just a warning. All right. So we start off like on here, which is extremely weird and unorthodox. Okay, and our first view is of this this torch. We have this room with really weird textures that don't make any sense at all. Okay. I mean, they make sense. Like, I guess this is a ceiling texture. I guess these would make sense as well, textures. But then we have this little um, slant right here. So puppies coming up. Sorry. Okay, so then we have this. Whoops. I'm gonna talk about it later. So we have this weird little um, ramp thing. No, RC. I confuse JCR and RC all the time. So RC did a playthrough of this map. He called them skateboard ramps. Um, and he basically said, beside the skateboard ramps, this map's kind of bad. He had an open mind toward it though. But yeah, like there's this like really weird, pointless thing with a a misuse of this texture. I would say, according to the intention of whoever created this texture. Um, and this like really weird brush sticking out through this ramp, and there's no like torch holder here, so right away this makes no sense at all. So I can see why people call this crap, but like to me, what I see when I see this is like it's just kind of weird and goofy and bizarre, and it makes me think about textures differently. Like even if it's not something um is the rest of the slab on the other side of the floor? I think so. Well, I don't know. I can't see it. Let me just restart. So, yeah, I'm not sure, but good question. But yeah, what I see in this is again, the potential of like, wait, you could do anything you want, right? Like even though this isn't a example of great design at all, um, to me it's like, wait, why can't you make like just weird stuff that doesn't make any sense? And because if you think about like a lot of the architecture in Quake and Doom and stuff, it's like really weird abstract stuff. Um, hold on. So, but it's like this is at a higher level of abstract, of like a lot weirder, a lot more nonsensical. Um, And so, to some extent, like this is just as valid as other maps. The design and flow is not great. Um, like it's not objective, but it's pretty close to that. Um, it's for deathmatch, and I don't play deathmatch. I don't like multiplayer games. So I would never experience this. It might be a really fun multiplayer map, like just something goofy. But again, like this made me think, like, why not do like really weird stuff like this? Um, I don't know. I think you get used to textures that are really like aligned properly how they're intended to be used, and like even if you don't do weird stuff, it's just like okay, like how can I use textures in a different way than what's seen? Something that even if it makes sense, like you could make stuff that's a little different. And I think there's value in that. So then we have this water elevator, so it blocks visibility from the monsters when you're separated by a surface. And so like this is how you get up and down from that top room to this bottom room. Okay, so those friends attack each other. Yeah, I always like to finish the combat before talking about the space. Oh, ah. Oh, I have 11 health. Okay. And then there's a. Okay, so that's everyone. Oh, that was very violent. Wow. Okay, so now we have this room, which makes even less sense, I would say. There's this random billboard thing in the middle. The textures are weird. The use of this difficulty texture is not as intended. The textures are misaligned haphazardly. It's a giant mess. Um, and frankly, like I love it because like this. Okay, so one thing to consider, um, is gosh, like is the fact that this was made in 1996, the same year the game was released. Okay, so the tools were pretty sucky. Um, so I'm not saying like you have to like this level, this map. What I'm saying is like think about the circumstances they're made in. Like maybe this person was just excited. This is what RC said, which I also thought of as well. It's like maybe this person was just excited to like see a 3D space being made that they made and they can play it and other people can play it. Like even if it wasn't super great, the fact that they were able to make something in 3D was just mind blowing. Um, I'm gonna say the same thing about myself too. Um, as as soon as I like made my first test map, which I didn't release, I'm probably gonna rework at some point. Um, as soon as I was able to like play around with it, it was just the most mind blowing thing. Even though making maps for Quake, even though making like 3D maps have been around for a long time in different engines and stuff, just the fact that you could like do something like this is really cool. Like I don't have to have any programming experience in order to like make and release a Quake map. Um, Again, that's me just being full of wonder in general. But I don't know. It's still like just mind blowing to be able to have the privilege to do it. I don't know. I just love it dearly. And so maybe that's where this person was. Maybe that's where their mindset was. If they knew the legacy of like how much it would be hated, would they have released this? Probably not. I would say. But like then again, you can't like who would have predicted in 1996 that this game would still be relevant and have like a super thriving map scene in 2020, right? So again, I'm not excusing anything about this map. It is what it is, but that's probably like what I would be thinking. Um, Another thing with this is just like again, like this makes me think about architecture differently. Even though this is like just kind of sloppy brushwork essentially. Um, oh wow, like I can put objects at angles. I can make things like intersect with each other. I can have this like water elevator um, as a method to go places, and like thin walkways, and have these like really weird precarious walkways along the side. So I would argue that this is a very valuable map. A, because it makes people feel strong emotions, right? Because like if you're indifferent to it, that's the greatest sin in art, to just make something that people are just like, "Oh, it's fine. It was good." Um, but if someone like hates it so much that like they say they wish they could get give it 0 out of 0, like that says a lot, right? That says like they have a passion for how they feel about like what a Quake map is, how they feel about what art should be. Even though it's like super negative energy, and I don't really care for that, um, it's still kind of great that people care that much to defend something, right? Of course, sometimes part of that is just to get reactions from a community, especially if they're YouTubers and stuff. Shout out to RC again for like having a calm, collected like reading of this map. Really, really great. Um, but yeah, as an artist, okay, so I will say, um, like as far as my personal art, a lot of it is like quote unquote like like not very skillful. Um I have a master's degree in art, um but the reason I did that is because I started off in photography, which is less about hand-eye coordination, that kind of skill, and more about knowledge and stuff. Um, and then I got into grad school when I stopped doing less photography, because of the ideas that I had. They're kind of like off the wall or wacky or whatever. So I'm not like a technically good artist. So that's also a different thing. A lot of people in the map making community, or people who like to play custom maps, generally look for like really well solid built maps. Most people probably are not interested in weird experimental maps. They want it's usually want people usually want to have like solid gameplay, aligned textures, um, nice architecture, nice lighting. Um, want it to make sense, even though again it's like Quake is very abstract. These buildings are not normal buildings at all. They're made specifically to, they're basically like obstacle courses. Um, so that I think that's a huge thing. Like I look like I'm specifically so besides the maps I play because our community makes them. When I look through the Quadicted archives for maps to play, I look for the weirdest, most unorthodox stuff. Okay, and again, that's because that's what I look for in Quake. That's what I look for in art. I would say the reason I like Quake better than Doom not just because it's full 3D, but also because I think it's a lot weirder. Um, of course, it's because it has roots in Lovecraft, Lovecraftian lore and design and stuff like that. So that's where that comes from, and that's what I'm more attracted to. Um, and Doom's like awesome, and I love it, and satanic and stuff. But it's more grounded because like you're like a marine or something like that, and there's like a storyline, and here like there is a storyline, but I personally don't care. I just want to like be in really weird surreal spaces. I guess that's the best word I could like use to bridge the gap between like what I'm looking for. This is like a surreal space. I want my experiences to be as surreal as possible. That's my favorite stuff. um Yeah. So, hold on. Okay. Yeah. So I was like trying to Tin Cup, I was trying to understand your comment because I'm not super. I don't have the biggest galaxy brain right now, but yeah, yeah, like so. Tin Cup, we're doing a WAD Wednesday anniversary stream. So if you do watch WAD Wednesday, if you're interested in WAD Wednesday, which is JP Libreton, he's a developer. He's worked on The Cave at Double Fine, and he does a lot of Doom mobs and stuff. So every Wednesday night at 7, um, he'll play a random game from the Doom WAD archive. So there's like more than 25 years of maps available, and we talk about it. And so a bunch of us organized by Arjuna from previous years, and now I'm organizing it this year. It's kind of scary. Um, we're putting together a map set um, of maps created specifically for JP to play. So yeah, so I'll put a link there, or maybe if I don't, yeah, Tin Cup. I don't know if you're able to get a invite to the Discord. I think maybe that's um, maybe yeah, I think maybe Arjuna has to have it. But yeah, Tin Cup. I knew you were like I hadn't looked at the chat in a while, but yeah, that point of yeah, just like seeing things being made for the first time, possibly is like one of the most exciting things. And I still feel that way, honestly. Like it's not as exciting. I'm more used to it because this is my like sixth map that I'm making, but I'm still like just blown away that people are like playing my maps, and that's so rad. Um, but yeah, I totally went off on a tangent, and I don't know where. Oh, being surreal, yeah. So like, I love surreal spaces. Um, oh, to Discord, I mean the Josh NES Discord that you just joined last night. Um, but yeah, surreal spaces are really really interesting and things I look for in Quake most of the time. Like that's not to say I don't appreciate like normal solid maps, because I love Quake in all of its forms, absolutely. Um, and so think about like instead of trashing this map, I mean you can do it. Like trash the map, but thoughtfully. Like think about like the whys of this map was created. Why was it made? Like what purpose does it serve? How can I like make it enjoyable for my experience? Even though um there's no um even though there's no goal to it, it's just kind of like okay, whatever. Like how can you make it an enjoyable experience for yourself, right? And if this is just a map and you just have negative feelings towards it, like, and you're not gonna offer criticism, then just don't be negative. Like that doesn't help anyone. Um, but this is the internet. That's kind of a futile thing to propose. Um, so yeah, um, yeah. So that's pretty much it as far as all I really wanted to talk about today. Um, I mean, I could go on and on about intention and stuff like that. Maybe another time, but yeah. So if you watch this, thank you, Tin Kelp. Um, thanks for being there. I'll probably just ask Arjuna for the link and put it in the YouTube description. So yeah, if you're watching this later, I have links in the description, so look out for those. Um, all right, so yeah. Also, if you're familiar with Anoxia and actually watch this, and you think I'm full of crap, then um, I don't care. This is my opinion, and I stand by it. Um, but I definitely believe in finding value. I personally like to find value in things that maybe other people don't, and I like to see the best side of things. I'm extremely optimistic. Um, Maybe not about humanity as a whole, and definitely not our country as a whole. But overall, I'm a very optimistic person, and I have lots of love for people, um, and like there's a person who made this map. Like, there's no point in like just being mean to them. Like, bullying doesn't really do them any good. Um, I'm sure it was not as big of a deal back then, um, since this was released the year Quake was released. Um, but yeah, I'm really hoping like Paul Cook was like not too bothered by feedback from this. So um, yeah, again, it's always good to find positives, find the good in unlikely places. So again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks Tin Kelp for hanging out. Um, I'll probably do the Wild Wednesday thing soon, but yeah. All right. Y'all have a wonderful day. Unless you choose not to, that's up to you, of course. All right. And toodles.